Derry, Maine, had always been a town that slept badly. It slept with one eye open, twitching at the smallest noise. It slept with its dreams broken into short, unpleasant fragments. Dark hallways, wet footsteps, something breathing just out of sight. Parents woke up at 3 in the morning without knowing why. Children learned early that closets should never be trusted and that drains made sounds they should not. That was how it had always been. Until the night the dreams stopped. It happened quietly, the way most important things do in Derry. No screams. No blood. No red balloons bobbing in the storm drains. Just sleep. Deep, thick sleep like sinking into warm mud. The first to notice were the nurses at Derry Memorial Hospital. Children stopped coming in with night terrors. The pediatric ward, once a place of exhausted parents and trembling little bodies, grew strangely calm. Too calm. Kids slept through the night without sedatives. They did not cry in their sleep. They did not thrash or whisper or scream. They simply slept. Parents were grateful at first. God knows they needed the rest. In a town like Derry, exhaustion was inherited, passed down like bad teeth or high blood pressure. So when kids started sleeping 8, 9, 10 uninterrupted hours, people smiled and said things like maybe they finally growing out of it or kids change. But Derry had learned, again and again, that change was rarely kind. The dreams did not disappear all at once. They thinned, faded, became distant like radio stations losing signal. A few children described it in the mornings, squinting over their cereal bowls. "I did not dream anything," 7-year-old Emily Grafton said one Tuesday, her voice puzzled rather than scared. Her mother laughed. "That's good, honey." Emily frowned. "I think so, but it felt empty." Her father looked up from his coffee, a brief chill crawling up his spine for no reason he could name. "Empty how?" Emily shrugged. "Like when the TV turns off but you can still hear the buzz." He dismissed it. He had bills to think about. The roof still leaked. And there were no clowns in the drains anymore. Were there? Were not they gone? Mike Hanlon felt it before he understood it. He was older now. His hair had thinned, gone mostly gray, and his joints ached in ways that weather forecasts could not explain. But Derry had never stopped talking to him. It whispered through old newspapers, through forgotten photographs, through the spaces between sentences in books no one checked out anymore. And now it whispered through silence. Mike sat alone in the Derry Public Library one evening, surrounded by yellowed clippings and the familiar smell of dust and glue. The building creaked as it always had, but something was missing from the sound. The background hum of dread, low, constant, almost comforting in its predictability, had dropped out. He closed his eyes. For decades, his dreams had been complicated, fragmented, haunted by faces and places and a clown that was not really a clown. He had learned to live with that, to catalog it, to name it, but the last 3 nights? Nothing. No dreams. No memories. Just blackness, smooth and undisturbed. Mike did not like it. He stood and walked to the children's section. The shelves were neat, orderly, aggressively cheerful. Too many smiling cartoon animals. Too many bright colors trying too hard. He picked up a crayon drawing left on a table, clearly done recently. It showed a house, a sun, stick figures holding hands. No faces. Mike swallowed. Outside, night settled over Derry like a held breath. Something beneath the town stirred. It had been resting, healing, regenerating in the way ancient things did, not through kindness or mercy, but through cycles. Hunger, sleep, hunger again. The feeding was not due. It knew that. 27 years was not a suggestion. It was a law, a rhythm written into the bones of reality. But something was wrong. Fear tasted thin. It reached outward, through the veins of the town, through drains and basements and the hollow spaces inside walls. It brushed against sleeping children and recoiled. They were unreachable. Their minds were sealed, wrapped in a depth of sleep it did not recognize. The thing that had been called Pennywise the dancing clown did not understand sleep as humans did. It understood fear, anticipation, the delicious, trembling moment before a scream. But this was not fear. This was absence. Deep underground, in a chamber no map had ever marked, orange lights flickered uncertainly. For the first time in centuries, it felt something dangerously close to confusion. And beneath that, something worse. Competition. The first death came on a Friday. 9-year-old Jacob Torres did not wake up. His parents found him exactly as they had left him the night before. Tucked in. Breathing shallowly. Peaceful. Too peaceful. The autopsy found nothing. No trauma. No toxins. No congenital defects. His brain showed unusual patterns. Flat, almost eerily uniform, but no doctor could explain what that meant. The word coma was used, then quietly discarded. Jacob's eyes were open. That was what unsettled the coroner the most. They were open, glassy, staring at something only he could see, or had seen. The town mourned in its muted, uncomfortable way. Derry was good at that. Flowers, cards, casseroles no one really ate. People whispered the same old reassurances. Kids die sometimes. That's tragic but rare. Do not read into it. Mike read into it. He pulled out an old notebook that night, one he had sworn never to open again. The cover was cracked, the pages brittle with age. Names filled it. Dates. Patterns. And now a new heading. Sleep he wrote until dawn. It was not hunger that drew Freddy Krueger back. Hunger implied need. This was irritation. He had been drifting, half aware, in the shallow backwaters of the dream world when something changed. Dreams, his playground, his hunting grounds, had begun to vanish. Not twist. Not mutate. Vanish. No screams. No running. No fun. Just doors closing. Freddy did not like closed doors. He noticed it first in the suburbs of Ohio, then Illinois, then further east. Pockets of sleep growing dense and unreachable, like black ice. Kids slipping away from him, not waking up screaming, not waking up at all. Someone else was playing in his sandbox. That was unacceptable. Freddy followed the absence the way a shark followed blood. Except this was colder. Deader. It led him through layers of sleep, through half-forgotten nightmares and abandoned dreamscapes, until he reached a place that stank of rust, sewage, and old fear. Derry, Maine. Freddy smiled, metal scraping softly against itself as he flexed his fingers. Well, he said to the darkness. Ai not this a circus. A red balloon floated past him in the dream, slow and lazy. Freddy stopped smiling. That night, 12-year-old Megan Walsh dreamed for the first time in weeks. She stood in a hallway that stretched too long and bent at the wrong angles. The wallpaper peeled like dead skin. Pipes rattled behind the walls. A laugh echoed. Miss me, kid? Freddy stepped out of the shadows, hat tipped low, grin wide and wet. Megan screamed. And somewhere deep beneath Derry, something else screamed too. Because for the first time in its ancient existence, Pennywise felt fear. Not of the girl, of the thing that had followed her into the dark. Megan Walsh woke up screaming. That alone was enough to send her mother stumbling down the hallway, heart hammering, hair wild, already forming prayers she did not believe in anymore. But it was not the scream that made her stop short in the doorway. It was the laughter. Megan sat bolt upright in bed, clawing at her blankets, tears streaking her face. Her chest heaved like she had run miles. Her eyes were wide, fixed on something that was not there. And she was laughing too. Not a child's laugh. Not relief. Not hysteria. It was sharp, broken, wrong. I saw him, Megan gasped. I saw the man with the knives. Her mother grabbed her shoulders. Sweetheart, slow down. You were dreaming. No, Megan said, shaking her head violently. I was not. I was back. That word landed with a dull, sickening weight. Mike Hanlon arrived at the Walsh house before dawn, still wearing the same jacket he slept in. He listened quietly as Megan spoke, taking notes he pretended not to take. Hallway, pipes, laughing man, metal fingers. What did he want? Mike asked gently. Megan swallowed. He wanted me to be scared. Mike's pen paused. And were you? She hesitated. Yes, first. Then what changed? Megan's gaze drifted to the corner of the room, where shadows gathered more thickly than they should have. There was something else, she said. Watching him, Mike felt the familiar pressure behind his eyes, the warning headache he had learned never to ignore. What did it look like? Megan shook her head. It did not. Not at first. It felt like when you know someone is smiling behind you. That was when the light flickered. Just once. Mike closed his notebook. Freddy Krueger did not retreat. He stalked. The dream corridors of Derry fascinated him. They were not like other places, too old, too layered. Fear here had history, texture. Freddy could taste it, metallic and sweet. But something had been feeding long before he arrived. And it did not like him. He felt it watching. Not hunting, waiting. "Simon clown," Freddy muttered as he dragged his blades along a brick wall that had not existed a second earlier. Sparks flew, briefly illuminating chalk drawings smeared into the mortar. Children's art. Circles. Stick figures. Balloons. A sewer grate yawned open at the end of the dream. Freddy stepped closer. The air thickened. Then the balloon floated up. Red. Glossy. Perfect. Freddy snorted. Cute. The clown emerged slowly, unfolding itself from the dark like a joke told too many times. White face. Painted smile. Eyes like polished marbles reflecting Freddy back at himself. "Hello?" Pennywise said, voice lilting, almost polite. "You do not belong here." Freddy tilted his head. "Funny. I was just thinking the same thing about you." The world trembled. This was not a dream reacting to fear. This was territory reacting to trespass. "You scare children," Pennywise said. "I eat them." Freddy laughed. "Buddy, I fillet their souls. You just play dress up." Pennywise smiled wider, and for the first time Freddy noticed something off. The clown was not reaching for fear. It was studying him. "You loud," Pennywise said. "Messy. You leave scars." Freddy stepped forward, blades inches from the clown's face. That S called craftsmanship. Pennywise leaned in. "And you only exist when they sleep." The words landed like a slap. Freddy's grin twitched. Pennywise straightened. "What happens to a nightmare?" it asked softly. "When no one dreams?" The hallway collapsed inward. Freddy fell and woke up. He sat bolt upright in the ruins of an abandoned house outside Derry, chest heaving, claws smoking faintly. That had never happened before. "Okay," Freddy said hoarsely. "Now I am pissed." The coma ward filled up by Sunday. Children, teenagers, a few exhausted adults. All sleeping, all unreachable. EEGs showed activity that did not match any known sleep cycle. Doctors whispered about new syndromes, about environmental causes, about mass hysteria. Mike knew better. He felt it when he stood near them. A pressure, like being underwater, like gravity pulling inward instead of down. Something was holding them, and something else was trying to break in. That night Mike dreamed. It started normally enough. The library, the stacks, the familiar comfort of old paper. Then the smell crept in. Burned meat, oil, rust. Mike turned. Freddy stood between the shelves, hat shadowing his eyes, grin sharp as broken glass. "Well, hey there, librarian," Freddy said. "You look like the type who remembers things." Mike did not scream. He never had. "You do not belong here," Mike said. Freddy's grin widened. "Funny thing, neither does the clown." The lights exploded. Deadlights poured through the ceiling. Not shining, but revealing. Geometry twisted. Space peeled back like wet wallpaper. Freddy staggered, claws scraping uselessly at the floor. "What the hell is that?" he snarled. Mike could not answer. He was too busy not going insane. Pennywise emerged from the glow, no longer bothering with the clown shape. Something vast pressed against the edges of the dream, limbs folding in impossible ways. "You see now," Pennywise said. "This town dreams me." Freddy laughed, high and strained. "Yeah? Then why is it screaming?" The dead lights flickered. For the briefest instant, Pennywise recoiled. Mike saw it. The children were not dreaming Pennywise anymore. They were dreaming nothing. And nothing was winning. The first rule broke on Monday. A boy woke up, screaming, not from fear, from falling. He clawed at the air, sobbing, yelling about stairs that went on forever and a laugh echoing from below. He survived. Pennywise felt the tear like a knife. Freddy felt it like an invitation. Dreams flooded back. Chaotic, unstable, overlapping. Freddy moved through them like a butcher in a power outage, carving fast before the lights could go out again. Pennywise struck back by pulling harder, deeper. Children slipped past Freddy's reach, sinking into the deep sleep again, beyond dreams entirely. Between them something new formed. A third space, not dream, not waking. A place where fear did not behave. Mike called it the quiet room. He found it once, accidentally, while sleeping beside a child's hospital bed. A blank space, no walls, no images, just awareness, and two presences circling each other like sharks. "You re-killing them," Mike whispered into the dark. Pennywise ignored him. Freddy did not. "Hey, Professor," Freddy said, voice echoing from nowhere. "You got a preference?" Mike swallowed. "You both wrong." Freddy laughed. Pennywise did not. "What happens?" Mike asked. "When you take fear away from kids and give it back broken?" Silence. For the first time, neither monster had an answer. They met again in the quiet room. No set dressing. No props. Just them. Freddy struck first, lunging, blades flashing. They passed through Pennywise like mist. Pennywise struck back. Not with teeth or claws, but with memory. Freddy screamed as he was dragged through 1,000 sewer smells. 1,000 childhood panics. Fear so raw it had no punchlines. "You re-crude," Pennywise said. "You need guilt. I need belief." Freddy writhed, then laughed through the pain. "Guess what, bozo?" He leaned in. They stopped believing. The quiet room cracked. Somewhere a child woke up crying. Somewhere else, another slipped deeper into sleep. The war had begun, and Derry was the battlefield. Adults started dying on Tuesday. That was when the town finally began to panic. Children in comas were one thing, tragic, horrifying, but distant in the way childhood always was to people struggling to pay mortgages and keep marriages from collapsing. But adults? Adults were supposed to be safe. Adults had defenses. Coffee, alcohol, rationality. Adults knew how to wake up. Except now they did not. The first was a truck driver who fell asleep at a red light on Main Street and never stirred again. Then a grocery store cashier who nodded off during her break and was found hours later. Eyes open, mouth frozen mid-word. Then a cop, Officer Dennis Hargreave, who dozed off at his kitchen table with his service pistol still holstered. No wounds, no signs of struggle, just sleep that went too far. Derry began to whisper again. Not in its usual low, secretive way, but openly now. In supermarkets, in church basements, in the spaces between news anchors' careful words. People stopped letting their kids nap. They stopped sleeping themselves. Coffee sales tripled. Prescription stimulants vanished from pharmacy shelves. People paced their houses at night, watching clocks crawl forward, terrified not of nightmares, but of rest. Mike Hanlon had not slept in 48 hours. He sat in the library, fingers trembling as he turned pages that refused to make sense anymore. His notes had grown chaotic, arrows pointing nowhere, dates crossed out and rewritten. This was not Pennywise's cycle. This was not any cycle. Something had knocked the rhythm off. And rhythms mattered. Mike pressed his palms against his eyes and saw, not darkness, but movement. Shapes sliding past one another. Two massive presences circling a shrinking center. Fear was no longer the currency. Sleep itself was. Freddy Krueger was adapting. He always did. He discovered quickly that adults were easier in some ways. Their guilt was thicker, richer, layered. Failed marriages. Drunk driving accidents. Words they wished they could swallow back. But they were also unstable. Their dreams fractured easily now, collapsing into the quiet room without warning. Freddy would chase a victim through a half-formed nightmare only to have the scenery dissolve into nothing. No walls, no sky, no sound but his own breathing. And sometimes it was already there. Pennywise no longer bothered with costumes in these encounters. It appeared as a pressure, a weight, a sense of being observed from inside one's own skull. "You re-sloppy," Pennywise said during one such collision, its voice echoing without direction. "You tear holes." Freddy snarled, blades slicing empty air. "You suffocate everything you touch." "I preserve," Pennywise replied. "I keep them for later." Freddy paused. That word bothered him. "You re-hoarding," he said slowly. Pennywise did not deny it. "You re-afraid," Freddy went on, grin returning. "That when they stop dreaming, you stop existing." The quiet room pulsed. For a moment, just a moment, Freddy felt something like satisfaction. The first survivor remembered. Her name was Linda Keene, 42, divorced, insomniac even before all this started. She came back screaming about stairs. Endless stairs spiraling downward, each step carved with names she recognized. Her father, her sister, her own. At the bottom, laughter. Not playful, mocking. And then another presence. Cold, fast, patient. "They were fighting," Linda sobbed to Mike, gripping his arm with bruising force. "Over me." "What happened?" Mike asked. Linda shook her head. "I fell. And when I hit the bottom, I woke up." Mike wrote that down. Falling breaks the sleep. A rule. Rules meant hope. Pennywise retreated deeper. It pulled the sleepers tighter, drawing them past dreams entirely, into a depth Freddy could not easily reach. The coma ward became its pantry, a quiet larder of unspoiled fear waiting to ripen. But something was wrong. The fear was not ripening. It was cooling. Pennywise touched a sleeping child and recoiled. There was no anticipation, no trembling, just resignation. Fear without hope. Fear without imagination. Fear that tasted like ash. And somewhere in the darkness of that realization, Pennywise understood something terrible. Freddy was not the real threat. The real threat was exhaustion. Freddy discovered the weakness by accident. A teenage boy named Alex, sleep-deprived, shaking, wired on caffeine, collapsed in the school hallway and fell asleep before anyone could stop him. Freddy entered his dream grinning, and found himself standing alone. No scenery, no victim, just the quiet room, and in it Pennywise, smaller, compressed. "You re-burning them out," Pennywise said. Freddy shrugged. "Not my problem." "You are emptying the well," Pennywise hissed. Freddy stepped closer, eyes gleaming. "Then maybe the well deserved it." Pennywise struck, not with fear, but with time. Freddy staggered as decades slammed into him all at once. Rusted boilers, forgotten hallways, children who had grown old and died. For the first time since his death, Freddy felt old. He screamed, and somewhere in Derry, a child woke up crying blood. Mike dreamed again. He should not have. He was too tired, too wired. But exhaustion won. He found himself standing in the barrens. The air was wrong, flat, soundless. Freddy stood on one side of the clearing, shoulders hunched, claws twitching. Pennywise loomed on the other, vast and coiled. Between them, the sleepers, rows of them, children, adults, faces slack. "Stop," Mike said. Neither listened. "You re-killing the town," Mike shouted. Freddy laughed. Pennywise watched. "You think this place belongs to you?" Freddy spat. "It's just a feeding ground." "It is me," Pennywise replied. Mike stepped forward. "What happens?" he asked quietly. "When there's nothing left to be afraid of." Silence. Then Freddy frowned. Pennywise stiffened. The sleepers began to change. Their faces smoothed, blank, empty. No fear, no guilt, no dreams. The quiet room expanded. The monsters shrank. And for the first time, both of them felt it. Not fear, not pain, irrelevance. Pennywise screamed. Not aloud. In concept, It lunged. Not at Freddy, but at the sleepers, trying to force fear back into them. Freddy slashed wildly, desperate now, dragging terror out of memories that barely held together. The quiet room cracked. Mike felt his mind tearing. "You, going to erase yourselves?" he shouted. Freddy turned on him, eyes wild. "Then give them back." Mike looked at the sleepers. Derry. At the long history of buried horror. "No," he said. He stepped into the center. And woke up. Cross Derry, alarms went off. Monitors spiked. Sleepers stirred. Some woke screaming. Some woke crying. Some did not wake at all. Pennywise recoiled. Wounded. Freddy stumbled, laughing and coughing. The balance had shifted. And for the first time, the monsters understood. They were no longer hunting alone. By Wednesday night, Derry no longer pretended this was a medical crisis. People spoke the word curse out loud now. In bars, in church, on local radio, where callers' voices shook with caffeine and sleeplessness. No one trusted sleep anymore. Parents sat beside their children's beds with lamps on full brightness, whispering names like talismans. Husbands and wives took turns dozing in chairs, afraid to lie down together. The town glowed all night, every window lit, like a ship refusing to sink by sheer stubborn illumination. It did not help. Fear could not be forced. Mike Hanlon stood outside the hospital at midnight, watching moths batter themselves against the fluorescent lights. He felt hollowed out, scraped thin. Whatever he had done in the quiet room, whatever line he had crossed, it had changed the shape of things. The sleepers were stirring, but the town was still sick. And somewhere beneath the surface, two ancient predators were bleeding into each other's territory. Pennywise was in pain. Not physical pain, pain was too small a word, but contraction. Its awareness, once spread throughout Derry like mold through damp walls, had begun to pull inward. The town resisted now. Streets that had once been extensions of its body felt distant. Houses no longer whispered automatically. Worst of all, children were dreaming again. But not of it. They dreamed of falling, of endless corridors, of being chased by something laughing. "Freddy, you poisoning them," Pennywise said as the dream space shuddered around them. "You make fear collapse too fast." Freddy leaned against a half-formed school locker, hat askew, blades dripping with something that steamed faintly. "Yeah? And you make it rot." Pennywise shifted, its shape flickering between clown, spider, something without a name. "I belong here," Freddy laughed. "That's your problem." Pennywise felt it then, not as a thought but as a certainty. Freddy Krueger could leave. He was not bound to Derry, not to a cycle, not to geography. Dreams followed people. People moved. Pennywise did not move. The town was its anchor, and anchors once exposed could be cut. Freddy made his choice that night. He stopped hunting randomly. Instead, he targeted the exhausted, the ones holding vigil. The parents who nodded off beside hospital beds. The nurses running on fumes. The police officers parked at intersections at 4 in the morning, eyes burning. He went for gatekeepers. Each kill tore open the boundary between sleep and waking, flooding the quiet room with jagged, unstable nightmares. Freddy did not care if they lasted. He needed noise, motion, panic. He needed the town afraid again. And it worked. Screams returned. Sirens followed. Derry remembered itself. Pennywise felt the fear surge, and recoiled. It was wrong now. Too sharp. Too personal. Fear stripped of ritual. "You breaking them," Pennywise hissed. Freddy wiped his blades on his sweater. "That's what fear is, pal." Mike understood the shift when the first nurse died. She fell asleep standing up in the ICU, forehead against a monitor. Her dream ruptured so violently that 3 other patients flatlined at once. Mike sat with her body afterward, staring at the faint smile frozen on her lips. "She was awake," Mike whispered. "She was trying." That was when he realized the truth that had been circling his thoughts for days. Neither monster could win, but one of them could lose. And if Pennywise lost, Derry might finally die. Not in blood. In silence. Pennywise descended deeper than it ever had before. Past the familiar chambers. Past the places where it had nested since before the town had a name. It pulled inward, shedding disguises, compressing itself into something dense and coiled. If fear had to be restored, it would be done properly. Ritually, Pennywise began to dream, not as humans dreamed, but as places did. The town as history unspooled backward. Fires, lynchings, floods, children vanishing without explanation. Old grief seeped up through foundations and sewer grates. Nightmares became communal. People dreamed the same dream. Parade. Red balloons. Music warped and slowing. And at the center of it, the clown. Whole again. Hungry again. Freddy arrived late and furious. He carved through the shared dream like a chainsaw through flesh, scattering figures, slicing balloons from the air. "You do not get to reset the board," he roared. Pennywise turned. This time it did not smile. "You wanted fear," it said. "Now you will drown in it." The deadlights ignited. Freddy screamed as geometry collapsed around him, memories tearing loose. He clawed at himself, ripping guilt and rage and laughter out in chunks. But Freddy was not a child. And he was not alone. He reached outward through the dream, through the town, through the exhaustion blanketing Derry like ash. And something answered. Not fear. Hatred. Adult hatred. Self-directed. Enduring. Quiet. Poured into him. Pennywise faltered. For the first time in its existence, the fear it summoned did not obey. Mike felt the ground shake. The library lights shattered. He dropped to his knees, hands pressed to his ears as the town screamed. Not aloud, but inside. "This is it," he whispered. He knew what had to be done. Someone had to stay awake. Not fight. Witness. Mike forced himself into the quiet room one last time. He found them locked together, clown and nightmare, ancient and modern, tearing at each other with concepts instead of claws. "You see, not both stay," Mike said. Freddy laughed, broken and manic. "I do not plan to." Pennywise stared at Mike. For a moment, something like understanding flickered in its alien eyes. "This town," Pennywise said softly, "needs me." Mike shook his head. "It needs a monster it can survive." The deadlights dimmed. Freddy felt it. His grin returned. "Well," he said, "guess that's my cue." He let go. The hatred drained. The dream fractured. Freddy was flung outward, spiraling through collapsing sleep, laughter echoing as he fell. Back into the wider world. Gone. The quiet room imploded. Dawn came slowly. The sleepers woke. Some screamed. Some cried. Some laughed hysterically. But they woke. The coma ward emptied over hours. The town breathed again. Deep underground, Pennywise retreated, smaller than before, wounded, diminished. Still alive. Still bound. Mike stood in the morning light, exhausted beyond measure. He knew the truth now. Pennywise would return. But never the same. Because now it remembered what it was like to almost lose. Derry tried to forget. It always did. Within a week, the news stopped coming. Within a month, the hospital returned to routine. Within a year, people would struggle to remember how close the town had come to something like extinction. Not a dramatic end, not fire or blood, but the slow erasure of meaning. Sleep returned. Not easily, not cleanly, but it returned. Children dreamed again. Adults too. The dreams were quieter now. Less theatrical. No grand chases, no endless corridors. Just fragments. Falling leaves. Dark water. Laughter heard through walls. Mike Hanlon kept his notes, though he knew better than to expect anyone else to read them. He no longer tried to make sense of the patterns. He only recorded what remained. Fear had not vanished. It had thinned. Deep beneath Derry, Pennywise waited. It did not sleep. Could not truly. But something like rest had crept into its existence. A forced stillness. An ache that had never been there before. The deadlights were dimmer now. Its reach was shorter. Children still felt it sometimes, a pressure behind the eyes, a sense of being watched. But the fear came slower, required more effort. Pennywise had learned something it had never needed to know. Fear could run out, and so could relevance. It remembered Freddy Krueger not as a rival but as a wound. A reminder that monsters who depended on movement would always outlast monsters who depended on place. Pennywise was place, and places aged. Freddy fell into another town laughing. He always did. But something followed him this time. Not the clown. A flaw. Dreams did not bend quite as easily anymore. Some victims resisted in ways they had not before. Some woke up laughing. Not in terror, but in defiance. Once, Freddy caught his reflection in a dream mirror and did not like what he saw. Older. Not weaker, but known. Someone somewhere remembered the rules. That bothered him. Mike dreamed of the Barrens one last time. No monsters. Just water moving slowly over stones. When he woke, he knew it was over. For now. He packed his notes into a box and buried them beneath the floorboards of his house. Not to hide them, but to root them in place. Stories like monsters needed anchors. Derry would forget. But forgetting was never complete. It left stains. Years later, a child would find a red balloon tangled in a tree and feel a flicker of unease they could not explain. Years later, an exhausted man would wake from a nightmare laughing too loudly and wonder why his hands were shaking. Years later, someone would ask why Derry felt hollow. No one would have an answer, and that was the compromise. Fear, diminished. Sleep, restored. Monsters, unfinished. Deep underground, Pennywise stirred. It did not smile. It did not laugh. It waited.